Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to all of you. It's very early in the morning in New York City. Um, I'm very honored by that very kind introduction. The resumes always speak about good things you've always done in the past. It doesn't speak about all the failures we've all had. But nevertheless, that's very kind of such a elaborate introduction you've made in front of this audience. I'm very honored to take up this award. Sometimes these awards leave you with a sense of desire to do more and to thrive and make more impact. I've had a deep sense of influence and impact from the 2 years I studied at the business school at Bhubaneswar. It, in a sense, laid a strong foundation from where I draw every day learnings in my professional life. Business schools, especially residential business schools, leave a strong impression on what we do for the rest of our lives. They deeply enrich you with cognitive diversity of people who come from a very distinctively different background, and they enrich you with friends you potentially have for all your life because you have really spent a very immersive set of 2 years at the school. One of the distinctive things I remember about XIMB and in those 2 years is the approach of learning was very case study driven. What that does is it gives you the ability to process information in a time-bound way, assimilate that information, and at rapid clock speed, build hypotheses and decision support using the data which you've assimilated. So the ability to connect the dots, the ability to look for inferences, the ability to build that hypothesis, and then drive decisions, I think is a very important facet which kind of gets embedded in your thinking all your life. XIMB in some ways is an underdog school. I call it an underdog school because it always kind of appears in a list of schools just below the top, maybe 5, 6, or 7 schools. So being an underdog school, I always generated a sense of paranoia, which helped me deliver more than what I actually have to deliver for a task. Paranoia can sometimes be positive and can sometimes be negative when you're actually preparing for something. It kind of generated a positive paranoia on everything I did professionally, and when I undertook tasks or assignments or engagements on my way. The learning style in most business schools, including XIMB, in India, particularly in India, and of course, certainly at XIMB, has a sense of agency. It allows you to build your own pace at which you could assimilate that learning and be a lifelong learner. Some of the speakers just before I was overhearing, spoke about how skills have a short life. And because skills have a short life, your ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn is always tested in a digital era. So building lifelong learning, in fact, I strongly believe lifelong learning has to be built in K-12 schools. Building lifelong learners is what I've actually learned at XIMB. And the ability to, have this learning attitude, learn it all attitude, rather than know it all attitude. And the ability to thrive in ambiguity and work in a sphere of influence has always been this amazing foundation I've built through the 2 years at XIMB. Personally, I'm a very I've spent a lot of time on evolving, on studying, on evolving the evolving business of the world, and the future of work and education. There's a lot of work I've written, and if you just Google for me, you'll find it. And I'm going to kind of, with the interest of time, I know you've stopped a very exciting conversation to accommodate this specific conversation with me. I'm going to keep this short and give you a little bit of glimpse of who the areas where I have actually built and learned a variety of things. And if you Google for me, you'll find quite a bit of that information in the public domain. So we'll a little bit touch upon the changing world of business and the future of work and education. From my lens, I see four shifts in the industries, four shifts in our business. The first and foremost is rapid digitization. I think one of the speakers earlier spoke about it. Rapid digitization powered by transformation led on data, AI, and cloud. Data is the foundation on all businesses which are being built in the modern era. The classical example of the power of data is how Apple and Google have an arrangement. The default search engine, I'm sure most of you know this, the default search engine on an Apple iPhone is actually a Google search engine. And Google actually pays roughly $15 billion a year just to keep the default search engine on Apple, leave alone Apple paying money to Google. Google pays money to Apple and hands over the search engine, and that is 20% of the annual profits of Apple. Just the power of data which Google is going to draw from, because they get to see the search, the search of various people who use iPhones, and what do they do with those with that data, and build algorithms of the future, build AI algorithms of the future is such a powerful story. AI will do what enterprise software did 30 years ago to all businesses. Applied AI is going to be the next big thing in all businesses. The cloud is the most general purpose technology in our lives. What I mean by a general purpose technology is something which improves over time, which spawns downstream innovation, and which actually has significant impact for the future. The cloud started as an agility tool. It transitioned to resilience, it transitioned to building scale, and now connected products. I have many of my automotive clients who actually tell me that they're no longer internal combustion, they no longer belong to the internal combustion industry. They actually belong to the cloud and the connected systems industry. So that's what digitization is. That's the first shift. The second shift is digitization with immersive dispersion. Digitization is no longer just digitization. There is rapid digitization. What has happened in the last 2 years because of COVID is probably what has not happened in the last 1 decade. But digitization is actually going to be combined by dispersion. There's dispersion of healthcare, dispersion of work, dispersion of education, dispersion of financial services, dispersion of retail. Every business is getting uncoupled from the physical setups, and it is going into an immersive physical plus digital template. And it's actually reaching your homes. Healthcare today is no longer starting at primary healthcare centers in all parts of the world. It's starting at your home, triaging your AI tools, then actually doing telehealth, and then going to a primary healthcare center. Education is happening at homes. Work is happening at homes. So it is a dispersed world. We're going to see more dispersion of sorts in all businesses across the world. The third shift is software is the new alchemy. Every business is a software business. Every business is a software business. Software in the past was very clunky and it had an inefficient distribution model. Software of today is very simple. It is assembly-led, low code, configurable, and the distribution is infinite. So software is going to be ubiquitous and it will be there in every business. In fact, every business is going to be a software business. For the first time in the history of corporate world, in FY21, in the calendar year 21, the number of software professionals hired by the non-tech industry is higher than the number of software professionals hired by the tech industry. It's just unbelievable. The number of tech professionals are getting hired by the non-tech industry. Volkswagen actually said they missed their cars, they missed their new release of cars because they couldn't find enough software developers. That's what the future is going to be. There are some industries which have really not embraced software: healthcare, education, housing. They all actually have given lesser outcomes than the other industries. Just compare inflation in your country to the price of housing, price of education, price of healthcare. You would notice that the price points of all these three industries have been significantly higher than the outcomes because they didn't embrace software. The fourth is industry transitions. I was always amazed how Amazon switched between industries using the digital platform. No longer Amazon is the only one which is wanting to switch industries. Every large enterprise, the Global 2000, want to actually switch industries based on a trusted brand, an install base of customers, and a digital platform, a renewed confidence in the digital platform. Walmart has already announced that they want to be in financial services and healthcare. I have actually been speaking to energy companies which have been saying that they want to be actually in retail because they will take their gas stations, reorganize them for charging electric charging stations. And as more time is spent on electric charging stations, they want to build retail ecosystems around it. So these are the four big shifts which are happening in the business. And I've written quite a bit about it, and you can actually double click on some of these topics if you wish to. I'm going to kind of a little bit touch upon the future of education and work, which is one of my favorite passionate topics. There is a unprecedented reset in every business and every industry across the world. On one side, people are calling this an unprecedented crisis of human capital. On the other side, they're calling it the biggest opportunity of our times. You've heard, seen a lot of written literature about the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation is basically because of four reasons. There are backlog of resignations as the economy improves, so people are enacting their plans. There is heightened levels of burnout. There is a pandemic epiphany, as I call it. Even I've had a pandemic epiphany myself. What I mean by that is you get a more renewed purpose for why you want to go to work. The hybrid options are allowing people to reevaluate and how they want to come back to work. It isn't anymore a mad rush away from the office. It is a culmination of I would say, a long march to freedom and create a balance between employers and employees. And the flexibility we are all talking about is no longer about flexibility to where to work and when to work. It's also about why I need to work. Several generations, including my generation, have organized our lives around work. I think it's time for us to organize our work around our lives. And that's what is going to happen. In fact, 4.3 million people every month in the United States are leaving their jobs. That is roughly around 4 to 5% of the US workforce. And the reason why they're leaving these jobs are they're looking for new purpose. I've done quite a bit of research on workplaces, work, and workforce. The template of workplaces today and the template of workplaces and workforce is actually set during the Industrial Revolution 100 years ago. Workplaces, and workforce was coupled tightly because there was a linearity in the way work was delivered. With skills being short-lived, I'm a nuclear scientist by profession to start. My first job was of a nuclear scientist. I call it the half-life of skills have actually gone down. Work and education are going to be intertwined. No longer No longer we are all going to study for the first 25 years of our life and draw from it for the next 70 or 50 years of our life. I call it just in case education. What I mean by just in case education is you study for the first few years and then you draw from it all your life. I think we're going to switch to just in time education where you intertwine work and education together. It's kind of linked to digitization in a way because of rapid skills depletion, rapid evolution of skills, or life of skills being short-lived. You have to intertwine work and education together. And that's very important. It's important because it just allows you to be relevant in your lives. It allows you to, and therefore you have to build lifelong learners in K-12 schools. Work is going to be very modular. It's going to be decoupled from workplaces, very hybrid. In fact, there was a Microsoft survey in the US which spoke about how 70% of the people want flexibility, but 70% of the people also want to be at physical workplaces. Work is actually full-time work in the times we all live in. Work is going to become full-time plus gig. Because it is modular, you could decouple it and actually move it away miles away from rich urban settings to rural parts of the world. And as work gets virtualized and gig workers come into picture, because work is modular, you're going to find more participation in the workforce. Even in the rich, developed nations, workforce participation is only 60 to 70%. What I mean by that is number of people who go to work versus number of people who are eligible for work. And that is because work is orchestrated in rich urban settings. So you have to actually shift yourself. Back in India as well, people shift from villages to big cities, towns to big cities. And there's concentration, and the urban planning of India has really gone for a toss because everybody is migrating for work. That's going to change because if it's virtualized, if it is in packets, you could deliver from any part of the country. And more importantly, you could deliver in smaller packets, which means even if you're doing adult care or child care at home, which is a lot in India, you can actually participate in the revolution of work. The cognitive diversity at workplaces has always been about problem solvers. The future of work is going to be about problem finding and problem solving. The reason why I think problem finding is going to play an important role is because machines are going to take over solving problems. What I mean by machines is AI software. And if machines take over solving of problems, the cognitive diversity needed in workplaces is going to be about also finding problems. Finding problems is going to be a bigger virtue than solving problems. So you're going to find a lot more capability beyond STEM education. And that's why management schools will play a very important role, because management schools really are the cognitive diversity hotspots in education ecosystems. And that's what I think the future of workplaces is going to be. It's going to be full-time workers, part-time workers, and machines. So work, human plus gig plus machines, as I call it. And management schools have this unique opportunity to build this lifelong learning templates. Imagine an Amazon Prime where you have a membership. You go initially for the first few years to lay the foundation in a business school, but you draw learning resources all your life as you go to work because you have a template. Imagine if you had a Cornell Plus or a Cornell Prime or an XIM Prime or a Harvard Prime, and you draw those learning resources all your life. As your professions change, your jobs change. Remember, we're moving from an era where we had jobs for life to multiple jobs in our life, multiple professions in our life. And I'm so looking forward to how the education system is going to get up for this exciting shift in the future of work. Thank you again for this opportunity to talk to all of you, and I'm truly honored for the award which is bestowed on me.